last time we spoke about Bechira, free will, which is a really very important topic, obviously. Because most beings don't have free will, which is interesting, you know. Not that they can recognize when they do, they don't. But most beings, including Malachim, do not have free will, except the higher levels have Bechira. But most beings, like I say, don't have free will. So therefore it's a very highly unusual phenomenon to have free will, you know. But the essential idea with free will obviously does... Was that?
A nefesh they have.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Look, we have a neshama, and we don't have, like I mentioned last time, we have a range of free will. We don't have it all the time, you know, and... might as well mention this because it's interesting. If the Rebbe Hashem wants one of these leaders, you know, to carry out his decrees, for instance, let's say the Jews need suffering, Yisurim, right? So does the Rebbe Hashem force these people to do it? That's the question. Does the Rebbe Hashem take away their free will?
We learn from Pari not.
What?
We learn from Pari not.
From Pari...
We learn from him that it's not, they're not forced.
Well, he was forced
Eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, I'm saying, but normally they have a choice. Pari was an unusual circumstance.
Yeah. Most of the time, so that's some people think that people, you know, that the Moshe takes away their free will.
Who are you referring to?
Para, he said para.
No, but who are you referring to?
And I said what?
When you say that Russia or something takes away the...
Yeah, let's say a guy like Stalin.
Oh, you're saying Russia. I'm saying the Russia, as in...
Oh yeah, well yeah, Russia, Russia.
A melech.
Yeah, the question is,
The evil guy.
the question is when a person commits terrible evil, let's say specifically, let's say a king, a dictator, president, whatever, you know, does the Moshe take away his free will in order to get this person to fulfill his agenda? That's the question. Let's say Moshe wants to bring Yisroel on Klal Yisrael. So the question, suffering.
Who was referring?
God.
You referring to as Russia?
No, the Rabboni Shalom.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Oh,
Wow. Okay. Let's say God
Okay.
wants to bring Yisroel on Klal Yisrael, suffering on the Jewish people. So the question is, and then all of a sudden the ruler gets up and he starts really persecuting the Jews, you know. So the question is, does the Rabbeinu Shel Olam, that's what it is, compel this person to do his dictates, what he wants to do? In other words, does the Rabbeinu Shel Olam take away the free will of Rishon? If he wants them, in effect, to make the Jews suffer? That is the question. We see by Paroi, as you mentioned, Pharaoh, that he didn't. That Paroi had Bechira for the first 5 makas, 5 plagues, and it was only after he refused that the Hashem took away his free will, and therefore it was over with. You know, he had no free will. Well, there's several ways it could happen. What's interesting is that the Hashem doesn't take away free will. It doesn't take away free will in the sense that he removes free will by Russia. In other words, the capacity to choose freely remains. But what the Hashem does do is interesting, several items. One, he looks around. Sounds funny, God looks around, but he looks around and he says, let's take a Hitler Machshemai. Okay. So he needed somebody to do the Holocaust. Obviously, that's why it happened. A Holocaust, something like that. As it says in the Gemara in Chulin, a person bangs his finger only if there's a gzera, a decree in heaven. That's how far it has to be decreed before somebody suffers. How much more so, you're talking about the Holocaust, 6 million Jews, and so on. 60 million people died in World War II because of that man. So what the Martian did is he looked around. Now I want to tell you something, Hitler was an unusual person.
How many people died?
What was that?
60 million?
60 million total died.
In
World
Europe?
War II. Well, America, Europe, all the people that died because of World War II. Were about those
Including the
60
Germans.
including the totality of the casualties of
That's
that
including
war.
the Japanese also?
That I know, but I remember
Well,
once
they
read that.
people,
Yeah,
the
including
Japanese
Hiroshima and
people,
Nagasaki.
they
It
consider
could be-
people and
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they include the perpetrators with the victims or just the victims. I don't know.
Yeah, it's all for...
But the victims were enormous. You know, it's incredible that because one man lived, 60 million people have died. It's beyond belief. You know, and it's not just him. I mean, you know, the wholesale slaughter that went on in the time of the Romans is beyond belief. You know, Khrushchev himself, they say, killed 10 million Ukrainians. Whatever. I mean, these guys. But I think the greatest guy with the greatest title, I think, is Mao Tse. Mao Zedong.
when did he live?
He was, he was a communist. He's the one that made China communist.
What, 1980s?
No.
Yeah, I remember he died. When did he
60s,
die?
60s.
60s, 70s, 80s, whatever.
But he killed more than Hitler?
Yeah, oh yeah. He starved them out. He didn't have to put them in concentration camps. The guy was, you talk about ruthless people, you know. I think the number is like 70 or 80 million people died because of this man.
What did he do?
What he did is he had the great leap forward. Every 5 years there was a plan. He would want to make China leap forward. So what he did is he reinstituted all kinds of crazy agricultural changes, which brought most of the population to starvation. And people died. I don't know how many people killed, but he's like legendary. You know, he's among the greatest murderers in history. Him, Stalin, Hitler, Caligula. Some of these guys get the Nobel Prize for not peace but for death. If there was such a prize. So he had to look around.
Kind of good job.
What?
Kind of killed that half the
Who?
world.
Kayan?
Killed that half the world.
Well, there wasn't too many people.
Quarter of the
Yes.
Also here,
Yeah, but he's a murderer indirectly. These guys direct, you know.
the manifest destiny here, the Europeans, the Native Americans were successfully Holocausted for all intents and purposes.
Who, the American Indians?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the Americans.
Yeah, but
Yeah, of course.
I don't know how many there were originally,
know
but
some
pretty much
Indians were.
gone now.
The whole West was Indian. It was all, whatever. But what I want to say is therefore that, so Hitler was a very unusual man. Why? Because it takes a very unusual Russia to want to kill so many people. Not only that, but to burn them, get concentration camps, gas chambers. I mean, you have to be unbelievably evil for this. So the Russian looked around and he saw in Austria there was this guy named Schicklgruber, which is, by the way, Hitler's name. Schicklgruber, that's his name. And he chose him. And he said, look, you're going to do my will. My will is that the Jews have to die. For whatever reason. I mean, the Xer of the Holocaust is incredible. But for whatever reason, the Jews have to die, and I'm going to choose him. So what the Bolshevik did is he gave him Siyata Dishmaya. Didn't force Hitler to do what he did. He gave him Siyata Dishmaya. He gave him incredible divine assistance, which means he removed all obstacles to his becoming the leader of Germany. You know, and he put him in the right country. So ultimately speaking, they all have free will. What the Bolshevik didn't do is he didn't block them, which he normally would have done. So he didn't block them, but they ultimately had free will and they did what they did. So therefore, the upshot of all this is that they all are chayiv. They all have culpability, which is guilt, for what they did. That's what comes out of all this, you know. So that's how he does it. We know this because, how do we know this? Because it says by a makkah. Makkah is a parapet or a rail on a roof. It says you should have to put up a makkah, which is a parapet. It's a railing around a roof. Shema yipoil hanoifer, lest somebody fall off the roof and get himself killed. So it should really say Shema yipoil odam, lest a man fall. You know, that's what it should say, but it doesn't say that. It says Shema yipoil hanoifer. Maybe the faller will fall.
She's gonna fall.
You know, so he's going to fall. Except the Russians sent him to your roof, so you're the one who got him to fall. But the Gzera was that he has to fall for whatever reason, but the Russian chose where he's going to go in order to fulfill the decree. You see. But not that he took away Bechira, but the Rosh knows all the people that want to commit evil. So he uses them as a shlichim. And that's a very important concept, is that evil people are used as emissaries by the Rebbeinu Shalom to do his will, but since they have Bechira, they are destroyed.
Meaning basically he brings an Isaiah onto the evil person?
What he does is he gives him, he clears the way.
Gives him an opportunity to do what he
Correct,
wants
yeah.
to do.
He doesn't block him, he gives him the opportunity. But the desire to do evil is in the mind of this person. God doesn't put evil in the person's mind. So that's a very important thing to know.
What about the reverse with Achashverosh? Like, we're led to believe that the davening and the fasting helped change Achashverosh. You know, helped. It wasn't his mind, but Hashem somehow changed the decree. So it was his Achashverosh.
Well, the Rebbeinu looked around in the time of Achashverosh, and he took a look and says, "Wow, I got my man Haman." So he allowed Haman an incredible rise in the government of Achashverosh. See, and Haman came out of nowhere, and he decided, did God force Haman to do it? No, he allowed Haman to succeed by giving him Siyata D'Shmaya.
He's asking the other way. He's asking
What do you
if
ask?
Achashverosh did good for Klal Yisrael.
So when Sarah fasted and davened,
So that averted the decree, yeah. So therefore, the Moshe did, he blocked them.
Blocked
That's all.
Haman, but
Blocked Haman.
Achashverosh
He
had
took
free
away the
will to
Siyata
help Klal Yisrael or not.
Wait, what? What'd you say?
That's what he's asking.
What do you ask?
Did Hashem intervene with the Bechira to
Oh.
reverse the decree based on Esther's davening and fasting?
Well, he intervened, he had Haman hanged. That's his intervention. Haman was going to go through it, right? He wasn't going to stop. What he did is he had him hanged, and that was the end of it. Hitler, same thing. They lost the war, and Hitler committed suicide.
Just want to ask a quick, when we have
Anyway.
Thomas Esther now and we fast, what does that do? Is that really doing anything in spiritual sense, or is it to help us realize the magnanimity of what she did to save?
It's not Esther. Fasting puts us in contact with why there was a gzera against the Jews in the first place. Because basically, you're talking about assimilation. What the Jews did is they assimilated Achashverosh. Not totally, but there was a tremendous assimilation. They attended his Suda, his meal, right? And he was displaying the Kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, whatever, and so on and so forth. And that's what they did. It was an unbelievable bizoyon of Kedusha. So therefore that brought upon them, obviously, the death sentence. So the Moshe looked around, so to speak, and he saw there was an Amaleki around, and Haman, Agag, and so on. He was Amalek, and he gave him success, and there it was. And then finally he said no, he stopped him. The Jews fasted and so on. He stopped Haman, he killed him, and that's basically what it is. So what the Moshe does, essentially, is not that he puts evil in the mind of a person. The person chooses to evil, and the Moshe allows him or gives him the opportunity to fulfill his mindset. That's what he does. That's a very important idea. So it comes out.
Last week we said that Yehuda was forced to do an Aveira.
Yes. I was going to wait. That's my next statement. Wait. Anyway, that's what he usually does. In fact, the remez to that. You know what the remez to this is? Because it says Baruch Mordechai and Oro Haman. Yes. The gematria of Baruch Mordechai is equal to Oro Haman. It's interesting. Same gematria. Why? Why would the gematria blesses Mordechai equal to curses Haman?
Because everything's bracha.
Everything is?
Bracha. Shem Shem Avrachim Ala.
Hey, that's good. Yes.
Avrachim Ala.
Yes. Everything is bracha.
We don't see it, but eventually.
Yes, the consequence is always bracha. But there's another concept also, another thought. Because in the eyes of God, they are equal, as you want to say, because they're both emissaries or messengers of God. Mordechai to save the Jews and Haman to destroy the Jews. They're both emissaries because the Moshe allows Haman to do his thing because he has what Haman wants to do conforms to the agenda of God. So in that sense, they're both emissaries of God. You see what I'm saying? So as such, of course, it will always be bracha, you know. But since they're always emissaries, they're both emissaries, so they're really equal. To us, Haman is, you know, what do you call it, the perpetrator and so on, you know, the evil one, right, the villain, as they say, you know. But to Moshe, they're both emissaries. Therefore, Mordechai is an emissary, and so is Haman. So therefore, the gematrias are equal. What's the difference? The difference is that Mordechai has bechira to do good. Haman has an idea to do evil, and he's given the opportunity to do evil. That's all. But in the end, they both are feeling the will of God, which is astounding. The nations of the world realize that in the end, and the remes to that is when it says uksil lo yovan ezois, and mizmashin mashabas, uksil, and the fool lo yovan doesn't understand. Ishba lo yoida uksil lo yovan ezois. That refers to the Satan. The Satan doesn't know that he really feels the will of God. He doesn't know that he's really doing the shlichus of the Baruch Hashem. He thinks by destroying Jews and so on, he's going to win in the end, whatever. But really, it all conforms to the agenda. And in the end of time, by the Mashiach, everybody will be shocked. Because everybody thought they were doing their own will. Yeah, all the Rishonim and so on and so forth. And in the end, all of them realized that they were nothing more than puppets in the hand of God. However, what's the difference between them, right? So the difference between them is their bechira. That's all. So if you did good and you were boicha to do good, you get reward. If you do good and you were not boicha to do good, but you did it, let's say, for evil, and it turned out good, you get punished. That's the classic in the Gemara of Avodah Zarah talks about Rome. At the end of time, all the nations of the world are going to beg the Rebbeinu Shalom to exist. And Rome is going to come to Rebbeinu Shalom and say, listen, we did a lot of good for the Jews. What was that? We built roads for them, bathhouses, a lot of stuff.
Circuses.
You know? What? Circuses, yeah. Yeah, some of the circus people maybe were even Jews, who knows, you know? So the Romans are going to tell you, we did a lot of good for the Jews. And it is true. They built roads which enabled Jews to have, transportation and all that. So Moshe answers them, whatever you did was for your purposes, evil. Okay? It also happened to benefit the Jews indirectly. That's all, So indirectly they also had a benefit. But you don't get schar because of that. You see, that's what the Moshe told them. And so on. So even if a Russia does good indirectly, but really wants to do evil, but he winds up doing good, there's no reward for that. And basically, even though the Romans said, look, you're right, we really want to do evil just for ourselves. We want to charge the money for the toll roads and all that stuff. But Afa Pikain, there was an indirect benefit. So because of that, because the Baruch was lefnim mishus adim, he gave them a mitzvah of sukkah, and he said, okay, I'll give you one mitzvah to observe, the Gemara says, and if you do that, you'll get olam haba. So what happened? So he gave them the sukkah, it's famous Gemara, and he made the sun shine very hot, and they couldn't stand the heat, and they kicked the door open and said, let's get out of here, and so on. That has a tremendous amount of pneumius to it. But anyway, the main idea is that the indirect concept, even though the Russian gave him an opportunity, didn't pan out. But the main idea here is that the Russian doesn't plant evil in a person's mind. He doesn't tamper with your decision. What he will tamper with, if he's going to tamper at all, is, let's say, by Yehuda. What he did is he increased his drive, right? And therefore he had no bechira. If you get, bechira means many things. You have to have the capacity to decide freely, but you also have to be able to decide freely. You have to have the opportunities. And your drives have to be equal. If you have a tremendous drive to sin, that's really taking away your bechira. In many ways, you don't have free will. It's called an onus. So what he made Yehuda was an onus. He increased his drive to be with Toma, and he had no bechira. Even though he had the capacity, but the possibility was gone because his desire to be with her was 1,000,000 times more than his desire not to do that. So no bechira. So he can do that. So that he can do. He can just change your opportunities, where the opportunity to sin is 1,000,000 times greater than the opportunity not to sin, and you're finished. As I mentioned before, the Gemara says, give a guy, give him money, great clothing, and put him next to a place of prostitution, and he's finished. You know, what are you going to do? And so on. So that's where you see that the Moshe can deny you free will by doing what? By creating an opportunity, or rather giving you the ability to do sin much greater than doing a mitzvah and so on. So he does that, but he won't insert the decision. He didn't go over to you who to insert a decision in his mind. What's the difference?
It takes away free
I mean, in a certain sense, there is no difference. Took away the free will. Yeah. But he won't take away the capacity for free will.
Might as well do that. In the case of Yehuda, you basically forced them to.
Yeah, but he didn't. You know, I'm just saying, you know.
Is it like Malach and Bechira, but they can only choose one way?
Choose right or wrong, or truth or false. You can't choose bad and evil. There's no evil by a Malach. I mean, ultimately comes out there's no difference. You know. So when he gave Paroi, he took away his free will. Did he take away the capacity for free will? Or did he increase the likelihood that Paroi would say no? Because all of a sudden Paroi had thoughts, why should I let them more slave labor? You know, look how much free economy I get and so on, you know? So once Pharaoh had that thought, that influenced them to decide to keep them as slaves and so on, you know. What I'm saying is that Moshe doesn't take away the capacity for free will. If he wants to take it away, he will do it, play around with the opportunities or play around with your drives. That's how he'll do it.
Does everyone start off at birth with a clean slate? Meaning, I want to ask, what makes some people more inclined to use the Bechira mostly for good, others mostly for bad, some to be pure tzaddikim, and lahavdil some to be wicked? What makes them, they're not aware, or is it, we all start on the same page and say, you know what, I don't care about good, or does someone have an inclination?
We don't start on the
before?
same page, no. There are two terms that you need to understand what they are. One is called temperament, and the other is called personality. What's the difference between temperament and personality? A child is born with temperament. Temperament means organically or physiologically he has certain inclinations. And it's inborn. Some people are, you see in babies, some babies are incredibly sensitive to sound. You know, some are, it's called colicky, you know, where was a baby, anything that could get him off starting to scream. You know what I'm saying? So and there are people who have a tremendous tendency to get angry. Low tolerance frustration. Very poor tolerance for frustration, and they immediately boil up. You know, that's organic. You know, that's how he's born, you know. So people are born with all kinds of tendencies, inclinations, or a fancy word is proclivities, to do something, and that's it. Ever heard the word proclivity?
Never.
Anyway.
No, it's not.
So can they be responsible?
Credo.
If someone-
Credo.
Credo.
So therefore, that's temperament. Babies are born with different temperaments. It's inborn. It's, you want to say it's genetic, whatever it is. It has nothing to do with learning. Personality is different. Personality is when a person with his temperament interacts with the environment. His parents, his peers, and so on, and based on that, he learns how to respond to the demands of living. So he develops a certain way of behaving, which becomes predictable, and that's called personality. So personality is a learned way of is a learned pattern of behavior, and we all have personalities that identify us. And then temperament is not a learned pattern of behavior, it is inborn. So therefore, automatically you're going to start off with different inclinations. Somebody who is very easily angered because they have a very poor tolerance for frustration, he's going to work on his anger. Somebody else who doesn't have that at all, he's not going to work on his anger. There's no problem with his anger. You know what I'm saying? He's got to work on something else, you know. Everybody's born differently, with drives, hormones determine, you know, genetics determine. It's called what you're born with, I can say, and that's called temperament. And depending on what you're born with, you know, that plus the environment, that's called nurture. There's nature and nurture. So nature is what you're born with, that's temperament. Nurture is what environmental, and the result is personality.
So all this biological and social programming, they're still held fully responsible for what they do in adulthood.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And that's why, ultimately speaking, a person is responsible for what? A person has free will, but what he has to battle with is his tendencies, his inclinations, his tendencies. You know what I'm saying? And so on. You know? I'll give you a classic example. It's not you know, I don't know. Homosexuality. It's a drive, you know? And today it's a big topic, what goes on today outside, you know? Even if a person has that, so there are very few that are organically that way. Very few, okay? And there's a tendency. But can they say no to their tendency? Of course they can. Of course they can. They can say no, you know? I mean, a man is born with a tendency of inclination to be with a woman. So what does that mean? He should go out and be with every woman? Of course not. He can say no. Same thing with a homosexual. He can say no. You know, it's an inclination, it's a drive, but that's the whole concept, is to control your drives. You see what I'm saying? So these people have bechira, you know what I'm saying? It's just that the arena that they have to struggle with is in this arena. Everybody has an arena. Your arena. That's where you fight, right? That's where the battle takes place. And the Baruch Hashem arranges it that each person has a different arena depending on the different type of tikkun he has to do. So what varies among people is the arenas that they have. Okay? But a person still has the ability to choose, just that his arenas are different because of his temperament and his drives or whatever, and his personality, and that's all. He has bechira in that sense. You see. And that's the mistake that they make. And what society has done, I might as well mention this, is terrible what they have done, basically. Because what they have done is they have permitted it. They have permitted or legitimatized that way of life. So therefore, a guy says, what do I have to fight it for? Why bother? Because it's now accepted by society. There's no more, it's no more condemning, it is accepted. So a guy says, what do I have to fight this for? So what they have done, that you should know, that's why America is a frightening place to live in, you should know. It's very bad, you know. Once they've legitimatized and make it a state-sanctioned behavior, then the Russians are going to come after them. And who knows if we don't see it now, the extremes of weather and so on. The Russians are going to come after them. I'm very afraid of America because of this. It's one thing the guy has it, but it's not sanctioned, so he's got to fight it. He has a drive toward that direction. So fight it, that's all. Like anybody, walk down, you know, like I say. Men have a drive for, innately, because the Russian wants reproduction, obviously, for women. So that's it. So there's still a union of sneers and all that, and so on, right? So the same thing with a homosexual. Once a state sanctions it, then there's no desire, there's no point in saying no. Because now, adrabah, you're nechshav, you have a place in society, you're mechubed, it's beyond belief. Once that happens, then they are inviting the old story called the Mabul. The Moshe will wipe out that society. Why? Because that society will destroy the reproduction, the whole ongoing civilization. Because obviously homosexuality doesn't lead to reproduction. And the Moshe will destroy. And that's what happened by the Mabul. And so on. So this is what's so frightening. And I think I once mentioned Katrina. Why Katrina happened? I once mentioned it, right? That was a classic. What?
They were going to have a holiday.
Yeah, like I said, Katrina, what happened? Monday the hurricane hit New Orleans. Tuesday went over the walls and just inundated the city. Why? I was wondering why. So I remember I read in the paper, it was incredible, because Wednesday, the South or New Orleans has a holiday called Southern Decadence Day. That's what it's called. And I was supposed to take on Wednesday. What is that? Where all kinds of zima, especially mishkav zocha, homosexuality, takes place openly in the city. And the cops don't do anything. It's beyond belief. And that was, it's called Southern Decadence Day. It's mamash, it's like a heta, yom heta.
This is not Mardi Gras.
What?
This is not Mardi Gras.
No, not the Mardi Gras. No, this is not Mardi Gras. This is whatever. I don't know where it came from. So this was supposed to happen Wednesday. So the storm hit Monday. It flooded the city on Tuesday, and of course they didn't have the Southern Decadence Day. So the shayla is, what in the world is Hurricane Katrina? And the answer is a mini marble. It flooded the city. It's a marble. So what I realized is Baruch Hashem, he's going to take out a whole city. He doesn't care anymore. So he took out the whole city because of what they were about to do. Why? Because it became sanctioned. And there, at least, the police didn't do anything. But with the Congress passes laws, like New York State and so on, that it's permitted, what they're doing ultimately, like I say, is legitimatizing that whole tendency, and that is a churban for America. And America has no idea what's going to hit them, and so on. And whatever.
You do have to admit
Anyway.
that somebody that has tendency to homosexuality has a bigger nisayon, much bigger nisayon than a regular person, because his choice is stay single or live with something he likes to live, versus a regular guy has a desire to get married to a woman, has a whole different arena in his youngest. This guy's much worse off.
Yeah. If
You
a
gotta
guy's,
cut him slack. You can't say that he can't control himself.
in a certain sense, it's true. That's right. But there's, Rav Moshe has a tshuva on it, on homosexuality, and he writes that it's us, it's an isa, that you're held responsible. That's what Moshe's tshuva, and so on.
Yeah, well,
Why?
if it's,
Or else,
if
quote,
it's,
But I want to tell you something. This is true in many ways. There's homosexuality, then there's bisexuality, right? And then there's heterosexuality. Heterosexuality is interest in a woman. Homosexuality is a man's interest in a man, or a woman's interest in a woman. But there's no isabada or whatever. And then there's bisexuality, where you can go either way. The interesting thing about it is an infant is bisexual. Doesn't make a difference. You can go either way. So what forms each way? What forms it is the mores of society, of his parents, of his religion. So that directs him in a certain way and removes the possibility of another way. You see, what's the raya for that? You take a look at ancient times. The Greeks, they were all homosexuals. They held it was beneath of them, a male, to be with a woman, except, you gotta get married because, you don't have any kids. But other than that, they preferred men or boys, whatever these guys would do. Roman was the same thing. The question is, if homosexual is abnormal, how in the world could a whole Medina be this way? One person could be sugar, but not the whole country. You know what I'm saying? And the answer is because they're bisexual when they're born. Except the society of Greece and Rome homosexuality was permitted. And therefore, even a guy who's bisexual, which is the rove of mankind, even if he could have swung either way, he said, well, why not? Adrabah. He was lauded by the fact that he was a homosexual. You see? So the majority of mankind, right, isn't that way. There's only maybe a couple of people, whatever the population is, that it's truly organically homosexual. So maybe for them it's an onus. Just like, there are guys who are pyromaniacs, who love to set fires. It's a mania. A mania is a pattern of behavior that has no self-control. That's a mania. Pyromania is people are mania to set fires. Kleptomania, they have to steal. All kinds of manias.
They're uncurable?
What?
They're uncurable?
Some of them are like pedophilia. It's a mania to have relations with a kid. That's very hard to cure. Pedophilia and so on. It means, child molesters. That's what they are.
Can be
Very, very hard. Yeah. Whatever
the
it is.
system, there's
What?
something to do with
What?
Drugs, it's
Drugs,
medicine.
illegal drugs.
I mean, well, yeah, whatever, yeah, or
Well,
exactly.
they
Yeah,
control,
but-
but it's going to jail.
yeah, very
No,
much.
they give them drugs.
That's why you have to.
They give them drugs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Their marriage relationship is them toilet.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they reduce their libido.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Give them too much estrogen, take away the testosterone. I mean, whatever they do, hormonally. What I'm saying is that, so therefore, yeah, wipe them out. It destroyed Greece. There's no Greece anymore. Greece has been nation, it's for years, the millenniums, Rome destroyed, and so on. Why? Because they legitimatize homosexuality. That's what ISIS does, and so on, And but anyway, but you see that if a whole nation could be homosexual, clearly it is normal, or it's normal in the sense that it can happen. You see, and the way it can happen because a person is born bisexual. That's how he's born, and he learns which way to direct himself based on, like I say, the values and the ethics, the morality of his parents, his siblings, his society, and so on. So what America is doing, and most of the world, is schrecklich. What they are doing is destroying America. They have no idea what they are doing. Because from Katrina, you see that the Russian will not tolerate a deviation of that sort. And by states, I forgot how many states already have laws that permit that. It's called,
Same-sex.
same-sex marriages and so on. They have no idea what they are inviting upon themselves. And the Russian will do that because they can destroy the human race.
They
That's
can.
basically what it is. But anyway, that's so therefore
Run by Sandy.
Sandy.
On a whole scene.
Well, there you are. Maybe Sandy was homosexuality. Who knows?
Short stays.
Hashem did it.
What was remember? Every hurricane, basically, is a marble. I mean, Katrina was a marble. It was a marble. Except you need the wind to bring the water on land. That's all it is. It's just a way of getting water on land. It's through a hurricane. Sandy was the classic hurricane. I'll never forget, which was incredible, when Sandy came to the mainland, it was really supposed to veer off east. But instead it veered left, which is unusual, 5 miles south of Atlantic City. It almost veered left. I think it was 5 miles south of Atlantic City. So it hit Atlantic City, destroyed it, wiped out New Jersey, and then when it went into New York City, it was beyond belief. My feeling is because New York legitimatized homosexuality. They passed it. Same-sex marriage is now legal. Adrabah, And my feeling, the reason why, I think what protects the United States is Jews learning Torah. And so on, because, so anyway, so that's the idea. I once told you why civil rights movement happened, right? What the Indian civil rights is.
Which era? It was different. In the 60s and 50s, late 50s.
Yeah, this can sound like a racist comment. Anyway, I should skip it. Yeah.
You
Anyway.
might have to sell your basketball team.
Oh, is that what the guy do? He made a racist comment?
Yeah.
What did he say?
He said, he told his friend, whatever she was, he said, don't bring your black friends here into the place. It's not accepted in our circles.
And that's why they're forcing him to sell.
Because they're all that way.
Yeah.
And they don't want to admit it.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway.
So they make them a carpet, so they look really good.
Anyway, so that's what the Russian does. He increases the tendency and the desires, and that's how he could take away Bechira, which he has done many times. So there are different, what's called instruments that the Russian could use to remove Bechira. That's what he does. In any case, these
How
are the
common
ideas
is
of
it
Bechira.
for a tzaddik to lose his bechira and cause a tzaddik to do an affair like you?
I mean, it's obviously not common. It's only nogea for the Klal Yisrael. If the Klal Yisrael needs something, then Russian can remove it. How common is it? I don't think it's very
Is there
common.
any other examples of it?
Besides
Moshe hitting
Yehudim?
Iraq was.
No, that why would it be
Yeah.
Nanash? Obviously, no. It's I'm sure there are other examples. I'm trying to remember, but
Did Yehuda do tshuva? Or he didn't have to do
But
tshuva?
he ended up not
He was
doing
an
it
honest.
very. He did evil. He did
yeah,
mitzvah.
well, yeah, but he
But
did an
no.
honest. Yehuda was an honest. No,
Yeah,
no, I don't believe in
David-
tshuva because he was an
David
honest.
Hashem. Is it my suit David Hashem?
David HaMelech, yeah.
Didn't need
Well,
to.
David HaMelech never sinned because he had a get. But although it was a chet because
The Navi said.
it was the appearance. Yeah, what David HaMelech did, the Maisa with Bathsheba, which is interesting. David HaMelech, the story of David HaMelech is really, what the David HaMelech said to the Hashem, how come it says Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov? Why doesn't it say Elokei David? Interesting. So the Baruch Hashem said to him, because each one of these people had tremendous nisyonos, and I never gave a nisayon that you could be worthy of that. So David HaMelech said, okay, let's go.
Bring it up.
Bring it on, yeah, exactly. And that is not good. You don't want. So the Baruch Hashem even told him what the nisayon would be. He said the nisayon would be with a woman. I mean, imagine he had the pre-warned and all that. And that was it. He fell. I mean, there wasn't a real affair because Bathsheba, who was married to Uriah Achiti, and because Uriah, what they used to do is before a guy went out to war, he used to give his wife a get. That if he dies, the get was retroactive, that she was really divorced when he died. So,
Divorced from the time he left.
from the time he left, yeah. So therefore, Uriah was Chayav Misa. That's how the husband, Uriah was Chayav Misa. Why? Because when he talked to David HaMelech, he said, my master, Adoniyahu. And what do you mean, my Adoniyahu? How do you say that? It's a Merida Malchus. David is the king. How do you go say, my master? You're my master, because you're the king. So that was Merid Malchus. That was Merid, what do you call it, Bizoin to the Melech. It's Chayav Misa. So anyway, he was Mechuyev. So, Misa and so on. So what David did is David saw Bathsheba, and that was it. He wanted her and so on. Moshe arranged that he would see her in such a way that he would want her, and that was it. So what he did is he sent Uriah to the front, knowing that he would be killed, because the front is not the place. You can't get insurance policies if you're going to the front. That's out. You're what's called a high risk, and he was obviously high risk. He was a certain risk. He died, and so David didn't do any chet because first of all he was chayav misa. The second thing is that even though he's Chayav Misa, he did not, she was divorced. But the problem with David is that it was the appearance that was wrong. Now, how do you do that, and so on. So it appeared as if he had Uriah killed, and therefore he took her, and so on. So it was what's called the appearance of impropriety.
Did
That was his
Shlomo
chet.
come from that union?
What?
Did Shlomo come from that union?
From Bathsheba?
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. In any case, so the Baruch didn't take away the Bechir of David. If he took that away, how in the world could it be Elokei David? What he did is he gave David an Nisayon, and the Nisayon is what he became. He failed because of that Nisayon, and so on. In any case, so you have stories of tzaddikim that fail, obviously, so. But the David asked for it,
So far, what you've been
Anyway.
saying is that it could go both ways, meaning either with a tzaddik or with a rasha.
Yeah.
Sometimes Rosh will take off. Usually he doesn't take off. Usually he just brings the circumstances to the person he wants
Yes.
to be his emissary.
Correct. Yeah, he can put him in such an opportunity, a place where the guy's not going to stand. Because each person has, reach a certain level where there's no Nisayon anymore. So the Moshe could do that also.
So what is a nisayon? A nisayon is like taking away the balance of bechira.
Yeah.
Or a nisayon
It's
is
called
just,
to remove the probability that you be Bechir Toiv.
I mean, in general, a nisayon.
You don't take away the capacity to have free will. I want to tell you, where does free will lie? It lies in the will. It lies in the decision. In the decision in the mind. I want to do this, and the decision then activates the operating will. And that will, in other words, once you decide, it's so elusive that we don't even know when it happens. But there is a decision, yes. And that activates the will, the operational will, and the will fires up the neurons in the brain, which activates the motor neurons, and you move. So the decision is where the bechira happens.
So what is an nisayon in general, like for us people, like regular people?
An nisayon is nothing more than a situation that will tempt you to go in a certain direction.
But tempt me means that I have full bechira. I have full bechira, meaning I have a balanced bechira.
Well,
What
that
tempt me means I have it's
Depends on the strength of
it depends on what the nisayon is. Some nisayon is where you don't really have much of a chance, and some nisayon where you do. But the problem is, if you fail in nisayon, then obviously you've increased the likelihood that you're going to fail the next one,
Someone
and
makes
so on.
a
What?
decision and then fail at that. There are people who sincerely want to overcome tendencies and develop
You
themselves.
can't overcome a tendency. That's a drive. You cannot overcome a drive. You can not sin. That's true. But you can't overcome a drive. Although, it's by David HaMelech, it says, I made libi cholol b'kirbi. It's a hole. David HaMelech was able to remove his tendencies. The heart is what we call the seat of emotions, and and therefore it's a seat of tendencies, so to speak. That's the symbol of tendencies. David HaMelech was so great that he was able to remove his tendencies. He had no desire to be chote. Amazing. So obviously it's possible. That's what the person wants. And clearly he has to build it, means he has to be responsible for the construction of Olam Haba. And the only way to be responsible for that is you have to have bechira. Therefore, he gave man the capacity to choose. But besides that, a person can have a capacity to choose and do nothing. A guy can get into an arena and not fight. So what did Baruch Hashem do? So he gave him inclinations that force you to fight, to do something. And that's called the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov. So as part of the plan, you need an Adam, 1. You need free will is 2. And you need inclinations, which is 3, which is to force a person to choose. You have no choice. You can't remain what's called inert. You got to do something. Because your drives will force you to interact and make a decision in the opportunity or the nisayon that you have. So the Yetzer Hara is what? Is the drive to sin, and the Yetzer Tov is the drive not to sin or to do mitzvahs, and so on. Question is, what is the Yetzer Hara and the Yetzer Tov? That's the question. But clearly the drives of the body is Yetzer Hara. The drives of the body is the Yetzer Hara. You see that because what they did is they killed, the Chazal were very annoyed at the fact that the Yetzer Hara is winning in Avodah Zarah and everybody was worshipping idols. So what Chazal did, I think it was in the time of Ezra, they destroyed some aspect of the Yetzer Hara, and all of a sudden the Gemara says, well, no Yetzer Hara, no, and so chickens didn't want to reproduce. Yeah, that was the end of the sex drive, libido. So clearly from Chazal you see that the physical urges is really the Yetzer Hara, and so on. Okay. So therefore, the physical urges that we have as a result of the fact that we have a material body, physical body, is the circumstance that drives us to commit sins. That's a very important concept, that we are driven to sin based on the urges of the body. So therefore the Yetzer Hara, the drives of the body is really, can be looked at as the Yetzer Hara itself. Okay. The Yetzer Tov, however, right, it's not physical, so what is the Yetzer Tov? So I once said what the Yetzer Tov is. No one once said what the Yetzer Tov is. The Yetzer Tov is the neshama. It is the soul. That's what the Yetzer Tov is. A person doesn't have to have a Yetzer Tov. He is inclined to do Tov. He's neshama. His neshama creates a spiritual drive to want to do good, to want to become spiritual. And therefore that's what the Yetzer Tov is. That's why you don't find that there's the Yetzer Tov. You always find the Satan, the Yetzer Hara. But you don't find a Yetzer Tov. And the reason for that is because you don't need a Yetzer Tov. You already have one, right? And that is called the Neshama. As we will see, the Ramchal says that. So, basically, he alludes to that. So therefore, you are now what? You have a Yetzer Tov, which is the desire to do good, right? And you have the Yetzer Hara, which is the physical tendencies to want to satisfy the pleasures of the body. The question then is, which is interesting, the Gemara says that it says b'chol levavchem, with all levavchem, which means that there are two Yetzer Haras. The levavchem is plural. So there's a Yetzer Hara for good and a Yetzer Hara for bad. So the question is, how could there be a Yetzer Hara for good? And how could there be Yetzer Hara for bad? Yetzer Hara is Yetzer Hara. It wants us to sin, right? So how in the world could there be a Yetzer Hara for good?
Didn't it say b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzar?
B'shnei yitzrecha, you should be over the Moshe. That's right. It's Yetzer Hara, yeah. That's Yetzer. What it means, there are two Yetzer Haras. There's the Yetzer Hara to do good and the Yetzer Hara to do bad. So the question is, how can the Yetzer Hara get you to do good? That is the question. You know what I'm saying?
And I always thought there was a Yitzhak Torah. You serve Hashem with Yitzhak Torah and Yitzhak Hara.
Yeah, no, no, you have to serve the Moshe with the Yetzer Hara. So the question is, how could you serve the Moshe with the Yetzer Hara? What does that mean? And the answer to that is a very, very profound concept. What does the Yetzer Hara really want? When what he wants, how does he get a person to sin? That is the question. It looks like what he does is he provides the drive. He provides an urge, a drive, right? And a person wants to fulfill that drive. Okay? That's what it looks like. And it's true at a certain level. But there's something going on that's much more fundamental than that. When a person does something, there's two things that happen. One, he feels good about it. He fulfilled his drive, yes? But there's something else that happens also. When you fulfill a drive, you also have a sense of self. I did it. I fulfilled my drive. Is the Anoichi. I. And the fact that you fulfilled your drive means you did what you wanted to do. And that gives you a sense of self. You see. That's a very important concept. What the Yetzer Hara is always trying to get you to do is to do the drive, but you did it. Because you are somebody. I did it. Anoichi. You know. It's what they say. He once said something, Rav Shalom Shmadron, I remember I heard it, It says you have to do a chet because I permitted what was forbidden and I forbid that which was permitted. So he once asked, Rav Shalom Shmadron once asked, he said, well, I understand something. I can understand that it was bad news, a chet, that I permitted that which was forbidden, obviously. Why in the world would I have to do tshuva because I forbid that which was permitted? Okay, it was permitted, so you didn't want to do it, so what? So why is that a chet? You hear the question? So he answers something which is a tremendous yisoid, which is what I'm pointing out. The chet isn't that you forbid something which was permitted. It's because I forbid something which was permitted. It's the Anoichi. Ich. They once brought a story of the Chazon Ish where there was something going on in Bnei Brak, and there was, I forgot what it was, in Bnei Brak, and they put out that the Chazon Ish haste, means request, that everybody come to a certain asifa, obviously to try to battle whatever was going on. I don't remember what was going on. So on the day of the speech, the Chazon Ish was going to give this, big lecture on what was going on, whatever it was, to try to correct behavior, prevent whatever was going on. So I think it happened even with Rav Shalom Shvadron. So on the day of the lecture, let's say we're supposed to speak at 3 o'clock in some hall in Bnei Brak. So 3 o'clock arrived, 2:30 arrived, 2:45, Chazon Ish was nowhere to be found. Chazon Ish was nowhere to be found. So everybody was getting nervous. Chazon Ish was supposed to address the Olam. So he mentioned, I heard this in Lakewood many, many years ago, when Rav Shalom Shvadron spoke in the dining room. I remember this story that he once broke down, and he mentioned this word. So he knew Chazon Ish, Rav Shalom Shvadron, and he went to the house of Chazon Ish. And the house was dark. So he knocked on the door, I think the door was open, he went in, and he's looking, and all of a sudden, Chazon Ish, where are you? So all of a sudden, a voice comes and says, Ich bin da. So he found Chazon Ish, and the room was dark, and the Chazon Ish was crying. So he looked at him, he said, you're going to speak, what's wrong? So the Chazon Ish, I can't go and speak. So he asked him, well, why not? So he said, they put out signs saying that the Chazon Ish requests haste, in Yiddish, that you should come to this asifa. That's what they put out. So the Chazon Ish says, Chazon Ish requests, who am I to request anything? What do you mean Chazon Ish says you should come to the asifa? I'm nobody. So he was so broken by the fact that it said that the Chazon Ish, it was that Chazon Ish said that therefore you have to come because Chazon Ish is choshev. He's important, you see? And therefore, that's the implication. Chazon Ish says you got to come, right? Which means Chazon Ish is a very important person. So Chazon Ish was devastated. I'm a nobody. What do you mean I'm important? He should have said you got to come because of the Indian, and there will be speakers, But if it said that Chazon Ish said that you have to come, it implied clearly that the Chazon Ish said, you got to come because of Chazon Ish. He said, what kind of nonsense is that? I'm a nobody. The only reason why you have to come is because the Indian is important to come. And it was so devastating to him that he couldn't come. He just stayed in his house and he was crying. Believe it or not, Derech was a Jew, And therefore, he wants to bring that. So therefore, it's the I that you have to do tshuva. I forbid that which was permitted. What do you mean I? Because I am somebody, and I can forbid that which is permitted. So you're not doing tshuva on the fact that you forbid something which is permitted. You're doing it on the fact that you're getting an ego trip. It's an ego stroke because I forbid that which is permitted. That's the main concept of the Yetzer Hara. The main idea of the Yetzer Hara is to convince you that you're somebody. And he does that by saying, come on, do this because you're somebody. And we gain a sense of self by doing this. And ultimately he wants you to gain a sense of self that is so strong that you're going to say, I don't have to do mitzvahs. I'm somebody. Who's the Rosh Hashem telling me to do anything? I'm equal to him. Your sense of self will be so great that it will enable you to defy the Rebbeinu Shalom. That's what he wants. When a person sins, or what he's really doing is getting a certain sense of self because he's doing what he wants to do. And that's ultimately the Torah of the Yetzer Hara. It's a very subtle concept. But that ultimately is what he wants.
You're saying the person who gives that same I understands this Shiva's.
So therefore, if the Yetzer Hara is what? Now that answers the question beautifully. So if the Yetzer Hara fundamentally is a physical drive, right? So I'll use the physical drive to do a mitzvah. So then if I do a mitzvah, then it's the reverse. There's no sense of I. I'm doing the mitzvah because I'm doing the will of the Ratzon HaBorei. Wait. Let me answer the question. I'm doing the mitzvah because of the Ratzon HaBorei. So then it's okay.
There's no Anochi in that?
What?
There's no Anochi there?
There's no.
Anochi?
No, I'm doing it. A mitzvah is the contrary to
Give
what
me an example,
Can
using
you
a
have
physical
another
drive
also?
from it.
That I am evident the Rebbeinu Shem, I am so chashuv.
Kiddush.
Therefore-
Kiddush, doing Kiddush.
No.
Those are all.
No.
So
Geschmack.
it only works on physical things. Let's say, in Shabbos, and
Chum.
stuff like that. Yeah, these things, but like shaking lulav.
No, it's a geschmack.
What about shaking the lulav?
You can do that through Yetzar, shaking lulav.
What
Physical
is?
drive to shake a lulav.
No, there's a physical drive to be somebody because you're doing the mitzvah.
To somebody.
Yeah. What's the greatest Yetzer Hara of a yeshiva guy?
Slug up cannons.
Who?
Slug up cannons.
Why? Ego. The greatest Yetzer Hara of a yeshiva guy is gaiva. And they don't realize that. You know? It's gaiva. That's what it is. You see. Very... And so they don't get caught up in taiva usually. It's not taivas that bother them, but it's gaiva. I want to... Who's he? Slug him up. Like, what you talking about? You know? Because who are you to argue with me? You see, I'm somebody. See, there's a certain, you know, when you vanquish somebody in Svara, you get a certain feeling that I'm important. I'm somebody. Nay? You have to be very careful with that. And the greatest, I'm not saying all yeshivas get involved with that, but I'm just saying, the Sultan knows that he goes to yeshiva guy, he's not going to get him to go and do grob averos, as they say, you know, a real sin that everybody knows is a chet, you know. He's going to catch him some other way. He's going to get that guy to believe in himself, that he's somebody choshev. That's the chet. And I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of yeshiva guys, boy, are they bali gaiva. It's unbelievable. Torah is supposed to make you into what? The reverse, an onav. You know how many guys are really bali geyo? It's terrible to watch a yeshiva guy, you know, and I hate to say it, but I've seen Rosh Yeshivas that are really bali geyo. Because gaiva is in, yes, I've seen Rosh Yeshivas that are bali geiva, yes. I'm not chas v'shalom, you know, but they fell. Where a guy thinks because he has a great head, you know, he's a gewaldiger cop, he's somebody important. You know, who I'm somebody important, who are you to argue with me? And how, you can see by their demeanor, the sense of self, the sense that they're what's called the smugness of themselves. They're not aware of it at all, because they don't realize what gaiva is. They don't realize how subtle it is, and how easy it is to get caught up into gaiva. Because they think gaiva is I'm better than you. No, gaiva is where I'm somebody, even if I'm not better than you.
So every time I do a mitzvah and I feel good about it.
No,
Is
good
that-
about
is that right?
no. That's not gaiva. You feel good that you did a mitzvah and you fulfill your tachlis. That's not gaiva.
But I feel good just because I feel that I did it. If not, I wouldn't feel good. And
But it's-
I did do it. I mean, based on the chira, the way you explain
Yeah,
it.
but you don't feel that makes you a somebody. You can feel good that you did something, but it doesn't make me a somebody.
What do you-
The
but
key
how
is
do you
somebody,
define some-
that I'm important. Ich bin etwas, you know?
The point is,
And everybody
it's
falls
a
for that.
Muslim.
It wasn't I'm somebody.
What-
I mean,
Means that even though you did something good, you could always do more and you want to do more.
Yeah, it does.
Pop what you
The
have
key
to
is,
do
what
it.
does it do of your sense of self? That's the key. Gaiva is an error, it's a distortion of self. Who I am. That I am somebody. I'm important, etc. And I once mentioned that there are 4 levels of Gaiva. Remember that? There are 4 types of Gaiva. 4 levels of Gaiva. And it's very easy to get caught up in that, you know, and so on. It's late. I don't want to get into it. Maybe I'll talk next week. It's very, and the lowest level of gaiva is the most subtle. Incredibly easy to fall into that area of gaiva. And that's the gaiva of shehitarti. Or salti ma shehitarti. That I asked, because that's what it says. That I forbid something which was permitted. It's not that you permitted something, that you forbid something which was permitted. Okay, chumrah, whatever. But it's, I did it. And that's that's the story that you see the Chazon Ish.
Until what point is healthy self-esteem?
I'm going to get to that. But what's the difference between self-respect and arrogance, And the
can't walk
flip
around
side,
thinking you're nobody.
and yeah, wait, and what's the difference between inferiority and humility? Right?
Important, I could see a person thinking he's important, it's just self-esteem.
Okay,
I'm better
so-
than somebody else. Somebody else is also important. But he has also what to contribute to
The
society.
Gaiva,
No, I'm not going to go into it, but I think I mentioned it once in the shit. I didn't mention it again, but you know this. Anyway, what's the difference between, well, I'll talk about next week. What's the difference between self-respect and arrogance? And what's the difference between humility and inferiority? Inferiority is a machlo. It's a neurosis, whatever. And humility is a virtue. Arrogance is distortion, sin, whereas self-respect is critical. What's the difference? You have to know that, you have to know, but I'm telling you now, the key concept is a very important yesod. Most people do not realize that. It's not the sin only that the Satan wants, the chet. But what he really wants to do is build up your sense of self to the extent where you think you're somebody. And that's the beginning of the downfall. You see, he wants to get your perception of self. That's the beginning of downfall. You see, and that's very subtle. And like I say, it is so subtle that the real chet of yeshiva guys, and maybe it's bittul Torah also, whatever, you know, but in many ways it can easily lead to gaiva. You have to be very careful. So, and I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of stuff. You know, the guy thinks he's somebody special because he figured out a Rambam. Whatever, when he won an argument over his chavrusa, and so on, you know. It cannot be ego-driven. It has to be truth-driven, emes-driven. There has to be a desire for truth, not for ego. There's a big difference. But we'll talk about that next week, okay? Anyway, very important distinction, okay? Anyway, I hope to see you all tomorrow night.